Hi, I'm Rabbi Pinchas Landis, and I want to welcome you to tonight's 30-day Elul Learning Challenge lecture, brought to you by Jewish Anytime, Partners Cleveland, and the Jewish Federation of Cleveland. It's such a pleasure to have you all tuning in with us tonight, and for those of you who are watching this after the live stream as well. So here we are, about 1/3 of the way through the month of Elul, the month that we prepare for the year ahead of us, the month that is set out for, as the Bali Musar, as the great Jewish ethicists line it up, they say it's a month for Cheshbon HaNefesh. It's a month to make an accounting of your soul. It's a month to take a look at your life and to see what you can do better, to see where you can improve, to see where you can make yourself just a slightly better person for the year to come. So, I want to be honest. Tonight, I'm going to speak to myself. You are all welcome to listen, but I'm going to speak to myself because I want to share with myself some things that I find inspiration, and hopefully they will help me to have an amazing Elul and an amazing Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and year ahead. And if it helps you too, by all means, listen in. But tonight I'm going to be talking to myself. There's a story in the Talmud that I always found so inspirational. It's the story of Elazar ben Durdaya, and it's found in Avodah Zarah, Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, page 17a. And the story tells about this man, Elazar ben Durdaya, who was one of the most debased human beings ever to exist. His hobby was visiting prostitutes. In fact, the Talmud tells us that there wasn't a prostitute in the world that he had not visited. One day, he hears of a certain lady in a distant land who is supposed to be the best in her trade, and he uses a great sum of money to go to this place to visit this particular harlot. And in the middle of the act with the harlot, the prostitute says to him, "There is no way that Elazar ben Durdaya will ever become a Baal Tshuva. There is no way that you will ever become a better person. There's no way that you will ever return to Hashem. You are so debased, you are such a despicable individual that someone like you can never find his way back to Hashem." Even though he had lived a life of such debauchery, such just moral indecency, somehow at that moment, the words of this particular prostitute resonated with him. Somehow it awakened him. Somehow it made him realize that he had wasted his entire life on something so frivolous, disgusting, and debased. So he goes outside and he says, "Harim v'gavos, bigshu alai rachamim, mountains and hills, please ask mercy for me in heaven." To which they respond, "Sorry, we got our own problems." "Shemayim v'aretz, heaven and earth, bigshu alai rachamim, ask mercy for me." To which they respond, "Sorry, we got our own problems." "Chama v'levana, sun and moon, bigshu alai rachamim, please ask mercy for me." "Sorry, we got our own problems." And the Sifsei Chaim explains that what he was doing here was he was looking everywhere in his environment to put blame for the life that he had led. "Mountains, my parents, my teachers, it's your fault that I ended up this way." "No, it's your fault you ended up this way." "Heavens and earth, it was my surroundings' fault that I ended up this way." "No, it was your fault you ended up this way." And after he exhausted all options, he puts his head down between his knees and he says, "Ein hadavar tolui ella bi." The whole entire matter is up to me. It's on me. It's all about me at this point. And he starts to cry. And he cries, and he cries, and he cries until his soul leaves his body. At which point a baskol, a voice from heaven, comes out and says, "Rabbi Elazar ben Durdaya, mezumin l'chaya olam haba." That Elazar ben Durdaya, with the accolade Rabbi, a term used only for Tanaim, the great rabbis of the Mishnah, is invited into the world to come. And the Gemara goes on to explain how he was an individual, Yesh Kona Olama B'Sha Achas, who is able to acquire his entire place in the world to come in one moment. And I have always found this story so inspiring and so fascinating because it teaches us so many lessons, especially relevant during this month of Elul. First of all, that we have to realize that when we want to do anything in life, Ein hadavar tolei ela bi. It is completely up to us. Yes, we might be able to get help from others, and yes, sometimes we might get that help. But you know what? Ultimately, change, improvement, success, the things that we want to do in our lives, it is on us. It is totally on us. It's not about our circumstances. It's not about who our parents are. It's not about the environment we were brought into. It's not about the school we went to. It's not about the kid who bullied us. No, it's not about any of that. Ein hadavar tolei ela bi. It is all about us. And the other profound lesson from Elazar ben Dodaya is that concept of yesh kana olama b'sha achas, that he acquired his whole place in the world to come in just one moment. Because there are so often times in our lives when we're looking at a situation and it seems helpless, but in one moment we make a decision. And that one moment, that clear-cut decision that we are going to change, it can change the whole trajectory of worldkind, of mankind, and for sure, of our situation. There's a story told of the great Netziv, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Volozhiner Yeshiva, and the author of many great works, Ha'amek Davar, Ha'amek Shaila, many monumental Torah works. And the story is told that one night he heard a discussion with his parents when he was a very young kid. And at that point in Europe, your life decision as to what your trajectory was often made when you were very young, just a mere teenager, maybe not even a teenager. And his parents were discussing that he really wasn't excelling in his Jewish studies, and that they would probably have to start sending him off to a trade school to learn a trade, and that he would, become a nice tradesman. And he heard that story that night as a young man, as a young boy. He overheard the conversation of his parents, and he said, I don't want to be a tradesman. I have potential for so much more than this. I'm going to double down and reapply myself to my learning. And it was that night that the trajectory of his life changed forever. And he went on to become the great Netziv, Rav Natali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin that we all know. And he told over this story when a celebration was made when he published one of his great works. And he said, had that incident not happened, I would have gone on, and I would have become a nice ball of bus, a nice working man, probably would have been Kovei Itim LaTorah, had my time set aside for Torah study, once a week, twice a week, whatever it was, daven with the minyan, I would have been a nice religious Jew. But after 120 years, I would have gone up to heaven, and they would have said to me, what did you do in your life? And I would have said, I was a good ball of bus, I was a nice working Jew, nice observant Jew. And they would have said to me, where's the Ha'amek Davar? Where's the Ha'amek Shaila? Where's the Volozhiner Yeshiva? Where's all the students you were supposed to influence? And I would have said, I don't know. But I realized in that moment that I could be so much more. Because yesh kono olam b'sha achas, we have in our lives moments of inspiration. Moments when we realize that we can do something different. Moments that we realize that maybe we can be just a little bit better. But what separates the men from the boys, the women from the girls, is that when those situations come, we make a decision. We change the course. We take action. And often we don't even realize we're doing it. Often it can be one small thing and we just, we didn't think much about it. And then years later we look and we say, it was that moment when we made that decision, that moment when we decided to change, that the whole trajectory of everything changed for the better. I have a good friend by the name of Steve Rosedale, and one day he had an experience like this. He had a situation where his marriage had fallen apart, he had become distanced from his children, and his children had gone off in the way of their mother, and they had become Balei Tshuva, they had become religious Jews. And initially, he didn't think much of it. But one day, it was actually a Shabbos, he was sitting in the conservative synagogue that he was a member of, and he had an epiphany. He said, you know what? I'm not happy with my life where it is right now. I'm not happy with where things are. I'm going to become Shomer Shabbos. I'm going to become an observant Jew. I'm going to be like my children and follow in the path that they have gone. Now, he had a problem because he had driven to shul and he didn't know how he was going to get home at that point. But he made the commitment that he was going to be a Shomer Shabbos. Little did he know that with that commitment, it would totally change the trajectory of institutions, of cities, of lives of people. Because what happened next was a short time later, he got a phone call from a friend of his. Rabbi Pelberg from Yeshivas Ner Yisrael, and he said, "Steve, I hear you become an observant Jew." And he goes, "Yeah, I decided I'm going to start keeping Shabbos, going to start keeping kosher, going to start keeping mitzvos." And he goes, "Great, I have some names for you." He said, "Names for what?" He said, "For dating." He said, "For date? What?" He said, "Yeah, I have some women I'd like to introduce you to." And Rabbi Pelberg set him up with a woman named Beatrice Wilhelm. Now, Beatrice Wilhelm was a wonderful woman from Philadelphia who had become widowed, had two wonderful sons. And when Rabbi Pelberg told Beatrice about Steve, she kind of laughed at it, and her friends almost on a dare dared her to actually make the phone call and actually see if there was something to this. So Steve calls up Beatrice, they hit it up over the phone, they eventually meet in person, they start dating, and lo and behold, they eventually get married. And one day, Steve and Beatrice are visiting Beatrice's children in Monsey, New York. And Steve's looking around at Monsey, and he's so impressed by the vibrant Jewish community. And he says to Beatrice, "You know, we live in Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a sleepy little Jewish community. How can we make Cincinnati more like a Monsey?" To which Beatrice responded, "Well, you got to start a kollel." So he said, "What's a kollel?" So he calls his friends back at Yeshivas Ner Yisrael, where his kids have gone to yeshiva, and he inquires on how to make a kollel. And the yeshiva helps him. They suggest certain people. They suggest Rabbi Spetner to lead the kollel. And lo and behold, Steve Rosa brings a kollel into Cincinnati. Today, Cincinnati is a thriving Torah community with a vibrant kollel, with young families to the point where you can't even get a house near the synagogues because so many young families want to live in Cincinnati. It's known as a true Makom Torah, as a city where Torah is taken seriously. And not only that, but the Rosedale family is one of the main supporters of Yeshivas Ner Yisrael, where I myself learned and benefited from their philanthropy. And I myself was part of the Cincinnati Community Kollel and benefited from their kindness. So the ripple effect of everything that they have done came from that one moment in time when Steve said, "I got to make a change." And little did he know with that small change, it would have a ripple effect that would affect all of Klal Yisrael for the better. That's Yesh Kona Olama B'Sha Achas. That's acquiring your entire world in one moment. Leading up to Rosh Hashanah every year, we finish the Torah, or we just about finish the Torah, and we finish it for good on Simchas Torah. And towards the end of the Torah, we have Parshas Nitzavim. And no matter how the calendar falls, we always read Parshas Nitzavim before Rosh Hashanah. And in Parshas Nitzavim, Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher Moses, is giving his final will and testament to the Jewish people. And he's chastising the Jewish people. He's encouraging the Jewish people to live better. He's giving us prophecies for all of Jewish history, that as Jewish history has played out, we've seen all of those prophecies come true. And in his words of Musar, of guidance for the Jewish people, he tells us this lesson. Heidosi b'chem hayom es hashamayim v'es haaretz, that it's testified this day, the heavens and the earth, hachayim v'amaves, life and death, nisati lefanecha, that Hashem has put before you, habracha v'haklala, the blessing and the curse. Ubacharta b'chayim, and you Jewish people choose life, leman tichya ata v'zarecha, so that you should live and your children should live. Hashem has put the choice in front of us, says Moshe. What type of life do we want to live? Do we want to live a life of blessing, or do we want to live a life of curse? The choice is completely ours. And the great philosopher Maimonides, the Rambam, in Hilchos Tshuva, the 5th chapter, right at the beginning, says, Reshus l'chol adam nesuna. The permission is given to each and every single individual. If you want to go on a path of good and to be a righteous person, harishus b'yado, you have the permission to do so. V'im rotza lahatos atzmo derech ra lios rasha, and if you want to go on the wrong path to become an evil person, harishus b'yado, the permission is in your hands. Hashem has laid it before us. The choice is ours. What type of life we want to live. What type of people we want to be. Rav Noach Weinberg, the great Rosh Yeshiva, the great founder, the great head of Esha Torah, when he was a student in yeshiva, he went to speak to Rav Ruderman Zatzal. He went to speak to the great Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Ruderman, before the beginning of the year. And Rav Noach Zatzal says to Rav Ruderman, he says, Emir Hashem, I'm going to have a great year, which means God willing, I'm going to have a great year in yeshiva. At which Rav Ruderman looked to me and said, no. Hashem wants it. That we know. He wants you to have a great year. The question is, what do you want? So we might say these comments, Emir Hashem, God willing, we're going to have a great year. No, God wills us to have a great year. I guarantee it. The question is, do we will it? The question is, do we want it? The question is, do we want better? Do we want more? Do we look at our lives right now and say, you know what? I could do more. I could do more kindness. I could study more Torah. I could do more mitzvos. There's something I can take on that I'm not doing right now. I want to do it. I know that Hashem wants it. The question is if I'm going to do what Hashem wants. As the Rambam says, we can choose our paths in life. As Moshe Rabbeinu said, it's placed before us. And we just have to make the choice of what kind of lives we want. Do we want a life of blessing, or God forbid the opposite? The choice is completely ours. Ein hadavar toloi ela bi. The whole entire matter depends on us. And when we make that decision to pivot, to do things better, to become better people, yesh kana olama b'sha'a achas. We acquire our entire place in the world in that moment of choice. I want to close with a story that I heard 20 years ago and has inspired me every day since. It's a story that Rabbi Yisachar Fran told at the 11th Siyum Hashas in 2005. Now, the Siyum Hashas is a huge celebration that is made every 7.5 years when the Daf Yomi cycle, the page-a-day Talmud cycle, comes to an end, and hundreds of thousands of Jews from across the world come together to celebrate this monumental moment every 7.5 years. So at the 11th Siyum Hashas in 2005, Rabbi Yisachar Fran tells the following story. He tells the story of a boxer, a man who did not have a strong Jewish background. He was born Jewish, but had very little connection to being a Jew. So much so that he didn't even give his son a bar mitzvah. Yet through a course of events, through the way that life has it, his son ended up becoming a Bal Tshuva. His son ended up returning to observant Judaism. And he went to yeshiva. And not only did he go to yeshiva, but he ended up becoming what we call a masmid, a very diligent student, someone who doesn't waste time, who uses every moment he has to increase his Torah knowledge. And so much so that when he would come home from the yeshiva back to his father's apartment on the Lower East Side of New York, in his free time he would sit at the dining room table and study Talmud. And his father became enamored with this. Here his son had become this super diligent student, so much so that one day he says to his son, he says, "Son, I want you to teach me some of that Talmud that you're so into studying." To which the son responded, "Dad, how am I going to teach you Talmud? You don't read Hebrew, much less the Aramaic that the Talmud is written in. How in the world am I going to teach you any Talmud?" He said, "Son, I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what it is. I want to study Talmud with you." So every night they would sit at that dining room table and they would study together. And the son would translate the words and he would explain the concepts to his father. And slowly but surely, they made their way through pieces of Talmud. Until the point many, many months later, where they completed one page of the Talmud. The father was ecstatic. After months of work, they complete one page of Talmud. Now, mind you, the Talmud has over 2,000 folio pages in it. Here he completed one page. And he's so happy. He says, "Let's make a party." To which the son says, "Well, Dad, there is this concept of a siyum. It's a party that someone makes when they complete a book of the Talmud, but I've never heard of making a siyum when you complete just one page of the Talmud. But you know, we live here on the Lower East Side, and the rabbinic leader of our generation, Rav Moshe Feinstein, lives here on the Lower East Side. Let me go ask him about this." So the son goes to Rav Moshe Feinstein's Zatzal, and he says, "Can you make a siyum on one page of the Talmud?" And he describes the work that he'd been putting in with his father over the past few months, to which Rav Moshe says, "Not only can you make a siyum on one page of the Talmud, but I'm going to attend that siyum." The leader of the Jewish people attended the siyum that a boxer made on one page of the Talmud. That night after the siyum, the father, the boxer, passed away. And Rav Moshe returned the next day to give the hesped, to give the eulogy at the boxer's funeral. And in that eulogy, Rav Moshe said, there's a Talmudic concept that we've been talking about here tonight, of yesh kana olama b'sha achas, that there are people who acquire their whole place in the world to come in one moment. For this man, yesh kana olama b'daf echad. He acquired his whole place in the world to come with one page of the Talmud. My friends, we have a year ahead of us. And I'm sure it's going to have its ups and downs. I'm sure it's going to have its trials and tribulations, and we're going to have our challenges. And God willing, we're going to overcome each and every single one of them. But the question is, are we going to live the life that just happens? Or are we going to live the lives that we want to live? Ein hadavar toloi ela bi. If we're going to have the lives that we want, it is completely up to us. It's not about our past. It's not about the things we've done before. It's not about our environment. It's not about our spouses. It's not about our friends. It's not about our children. It's not about our parents. It's about us. And if we are going to have that sha'achas, that moment where we're going to look and say, we can be better. We can be different. We can improve ourselves, and in so doing, we can change the world. I would like to wish you all a kasiva v'chasima tova, that we should all be written and sealed into the book of life for an amazing year ahead.